Tomil opened his eyes slowly. His head was spinning, and everything felt quiet around him. He tried to sit up, but his arms were weak. The last thing he remembered was the ship shaking, alarms blaring, and a blinding flash. Now he was lying on the ground, surrounded by tall trees with silver leaves. The sky above was soft blue with two suns shining down. His suit was torn in some places, but his oxygen meter showed green. He was alive. The ship must have crash-landed while he was unconscious. He stood up and looked around. Pieces of metal were scattered in the grass. Smoke was rising from the wreckage. Tomil was a young space scout. He had been on a solo patrol mission when something hit his ship. He had no idea what it was. Maybe space debris or a small meteor. His communicator still worked, but the signal was weak. He sent out a distress call to his base on Earth. The message went through, but the reply said it might take many days for rescue. He checked the area. There were no dangerous animals, no sharp weather, and the air was clean. The planet seemed peaceful. He found a small clearing near the wreckage and decided to set up a temporary camp. He built a simple shelter using ship parts and tree branches. His emergency food pack had only a few dry bars and water bottles, enough for 3 or 4 days. After that, he would need to find something to eat. As the sun started to set, the forest became silent. Strange, glowing insects flew between the trees. A soft wind blew through the leaves. Tomil sat near his shelter, eating a dry bar and drinking water. He looked up at the stars and wondered if help would come in time. The night passed slowly. He heard distant sounds, maybe birds or something else. He kept his tool close and stayed inside his shelter. Morning came quietly. Sunlight warmed the air. Tomil stood up and stretched. Then he noticed something surprising. Just outside his shelter, placed on a flat rock, was a wooden bowl. Inside was warm soup. It smelled sweet and spicy. There was also a round fruit beside it. The bowl looked handmade, smooth and clean. He looked around but saw no one. He didn't know who left it. Maybe someone lived on this planet. But why would they help him? He was a stranger. Still, the soup smelled safe and he was hungry. He tasted it slowly. The flavor was rich and comforting. It was better than anything he had eaten in space. He finished the bowl and ate the fruit too. Then he placed the bowl back on the rock. He wanted to meet the person who brought the food, but they didn't show up. That day he explored a little. He found a small stream and cleaned his hands and face. He gathered some dry branches to build a small fire. The second night was calmer. The stars were clear and the wind was soft. Again, in the morning, a meal was waiting outside. This time it was cooked roots, roasted seeds, and flatbread made from something like grain. The food was arranged nicely on green leaves. There was also a small cup of sweet liquid, maybe juice from local fruit. Tomil felt both curious and thankful. Someone was watching him, maybe from the trees. He tried to stay awake all night, hoping to see who brought the food. But sleep took over him. The next morning, another meal appeared. This time, Tomil had an idea. He took a flat stone and used a sharp tool to draw a simple picture of himself with a smiling face. Next to it, he carved a picture of a hand with a heart beside it. Below that, he scratched the word, "Thank you." He placed the drawing near the bowl and waited. He sat under the tree watching the shadows. Then, just before sunset, he saw movement in the trees. A figure stood behind the leaves, tall and thin, with purple skin that shimmered in the light. Long white hair was tied behind the head. The figure had large silver eyes that looked straight at him. It was a girl. Not human, but not scary. She wore a soft robe made from green and blue threads. Her hands were long, with fingers that moved like dancing wind. She didn't come closer. She just looked at him. Tomil didn't move. He slowly raised his hand and waved gently. She tilted her head, then turned and vanished into the trees. Tomil smiled. She was real, not a dream or an animal. She had been helping him from the beginning. He felt safe. He wanted to know more about her. Who was she? Why was she helping him? Could they talk? That night, he added more drawings to his flat stone. He drew her face, then drew both of them sitting beside a fire. He placed it near the bowl in the morning. The food came again. This time, it included a small folded cloth. Inside was a polished stone with markings. Maybe it was a gift. He held it carefully and placed it near his chest. The girl did not appear that day, but Tommel knew she was near, watching, helping, waiting. He looked at the sky again. Rescue was still far away, but now he was not alone. He had a silent friend on this quiet planet, and for the first time since the crash, he felt hope. The next morning, Tommel woke up early. The sun was not fully up yet, and the air felt cool and fresh. He stepped outside his small shelter and looked toward the flat rock. As he expected, a new meal had been left there. This time, the food was even more colorful. There were small, round pieces that looked like roasted nuts, slices of green fruit, and a soft bread filled with something sweet. Tommel smiled and sat down to eat. Each bite was full of flavor. The girl who cooked for him clearly knew what she was doing. She didn't just leave food for survival. She left meals that showed care and thought. It was almost like she wanted him to feel at home. He finished eating and placed the empty bowl on the rock again. Then he sat with his sketch stone and started drawing more simple pictures. He drew two figures sitting together under a tree, added a sun in the corner and a fire between them. At the bottom, he scratched another "Thank you." Later that day, Tommel walked into the nearby woods, following the path where he had first seen the girl. He moved slowly, not wanting to scare her. The trees here were tall with wide trunks, and the light coming through the leaves made patterns on the ground. He stopped near a thick bush and waited, and minutes passed, but nothing happened. He turned to leave, and that's when he saw her again. She stood a short distance away, between two trees. Her purple skin glowed in the sunlight. She had a calm face and watched him without fear. Her silver eyes did not blink much. She didn't speak, but she didn't run either. Tommel raised his hand again, slowly, just like before. She copied him and raised her hand too. They stood like that for a while, then she lowered her hand and turned away. But this time she didn't walk far. She moved behind a tree and peeked again, as if waiting for something. Tommel took a step forward, then stopped. He didn't want to go too close. He reached into his pack and took out a small tool. It was a heat lamp from his ship, still working. He held it up and pointed to the sun, then to the lamp, showing that both gave light. She watched him, then pointed to the sky, and made a slow circle in the air with her finger. Maybe that was how her people described the sun. Tommel sat down on a nearby stone. He didn't try to talk more. He just stayed there, letting her know he was friendly. After a few minutes, she came a bit closer and sat on the ground. Still a good distance away, but closer than before. They sat in silence. Birds sang high in the trees, and the wind moved gently through the leaves. After a while, she stood up and walked away without a sound. Tommel returned to his camp and found something new beside the bowl. It was a small bundle wrapped in green leaves. Inside was a string necklace with a smooth blue stone. He held it in his hand, feeling its warmth. It wasn't just a gift, it was a message. She was opening a path between them. He wore the necklace around his neck and touched it gently. Then he worked on a gift for her. He took a clean piece of metal from the shipwreck and shaped it into a small circle. Using his tool, he carved a symbol into it. It was a mix of her sun circle and his thank you sign. It was not perfect, but it meant something. That night, Tommel placed the metal gift near the flat rock along with a simple meal he tried to make from the fruits and roots she had once left. He wasn't a great cook, but he wanted to try. He hoped she would understand the meaning behind it. In the morning, both his meal and the gift were gone. In their place, a new bowl of warm food waited, along with something that made his heart skip. A sketch. On a piece of thin bark, she had drawn something using dark juice from a fruit. The drawing showed two figures again. One looked like her, the other like him. They were sitting under a tree, just like his sketch from before. But in her drawing, they were holding hands. Tomil stared at it for a long time. It was clear now. She wasn't just helping him because she was kind. She had started to care for him. Her drawings, her food, her silence, all of it carried feeling. The next day, he made a plan. He wanted to meet her properly. He prepared a fire in the clearing beside his shelter. He arranged stones in a circle and placed 2 seats made from logs. Then he waited. As the sun lowered and the sky turned orange, she came, quiet as always. She stood at the edge of the clearing and looked at him. He pointed to the fire, then to the seat. She hesitated, then walked forward, step by step. When she sat down across from him, his heart felt full. Tomil offered her a piece of fruit. She took it and smiled. It was the first time he saw her lips move in that way. A small, soft smile. They didn't need words. The fire crackled between them. The stars came out slowly, and for the first time since the crash, Tomil didn't feel like a visitor on this planet. He felt like he belonged. She had come close, not just in distance, but in heart. The silent visitor was silent no more. She was becoming his friend. Tomil began to wake up early every day, not because of habit, but because he looked forward to seeing her. The silent girl, whom he now called Mira, had become the most important part of his days. He had never heard her speak, but her actions said more than words ever could. Each morning he would find a new meal near the flat rock. She had started leaving little extras now, flowers shaped like stars, small folded leaves with sweet smells, and soft cloths tied with grass. These small touches showed care and thought. Tomil began saving each one carefully in a corner of his shelter. One morning, after eating a breakfast of roasted fruits and warm flatbread, Tomil had an idea. He took a long stick and drew a large square on the ground. Inside it, he drew a sun, trees, 2 figures, and a fire between them. Then he waited. Mira appeared as usual, watching from the edge of the forest. He pointed to the ground drawing and stepped aside. She came closer, looking at his work. Her silver eyes moved slowly over the drawing. Then she bent down and added something with her own stick. She drew a 3rd figure, a small creature with 4 legs and round ears. It looked like a pet. Tomil laughed softly. He pointed to himself and made a funny face, pretending to bark like the creature. Mira covered her mouth, and though no sound came, he saw her shoulders move with laughter. They started meeting near the fire almost every evening. Tomil would cook simple dishes with what he had learned from her meals. Sometimes she would bring something half-cooked, and they would finish it together. He tried copying her techniques, how she used thin, sharp stones to slice fruit, or how she wrapped leaves to bake small seeds near hot coals. Though they could not speak in full sentences, they began building their own language using hands, eyes, and smiles. A tap on the chest meant me. A point to the sky meant sun. A hand on the heart with a slow nod meant I understand. Tomil made small picture cards from smooth bark. On each one, he drew a simple object or action, then showed Mira. She picked up the idea quickly. After a few days, she started making her own picture cards and handing them to him before meals. One card showed a tree with circles around it. She pointed to a tall tree nearby and then to the card. Tomil guessed she was telling him that the Fruit from that tree was ready to eat. Another card showed a large animal. She pointed to the forest and made a low, sweeping gesture. A warning, maybe. They were learning each other's ways, not only with hands but also with hearts. One evening, while sitting by the fire, Mira took out a small piece of clay. She shaped it into two figures, one tall and one shorter. Then she made their arms touch. She placed it in his hand and looked at him with soft eyes. Tomil didn't know how to answer. His heart was full. He nodded slowly and placed the clay figures inside his jacket pocket. The next day, Tomil explored the forest further, following a safe path marked by stones she had once arranged. Along the way, he found a hidden pool with clear water and strange, glowing plants at the bottom. He filled his bottle and brought a glowing leaf back for Mira. That evening, he gave it to her. She held it close, smiling gently. Their time together grew deeper. Mira started helping him with his tools. She was curious about his ship parts and once sat for an hour watching him fix a broken scanner. He showed her how it worked, and she touched the screen with wonder. In return, she brought him a folded cloth filled with seeds, some of which glowed in the dark. Each day brought something new. One day, they watched flying lights dance across the sky. Another day, they chased small animals through the trees, laughing with only their eyes and movements. Tomil had never felt this alive before. One evening, Mira brought a large flat stone and placed it near the fire. Using crushed berries, she painted a scene. It showed two people standing side by side, holding hands. Above them was the sky, with two suns and stars. Tomil added a small drawing of Earth and a spaceship beside it. Then he pointed to himself and to the drawing of Earth, then to Mira and the two-sun sky. She watched silently, then touched both pictures and joined them together with a line. They sat side by side, not needing to say anything more. Their connection had grown beyond simple signs and drawings. It had become something deeper: trust, care, and something close to love. Tomil knew he would not forget these days, and deep inside, he wondered if he even wanted to leave anymore. Back in his shelter, the communicator blinked with a small green light. A message had arrived. Rescue was close. He stared at it for a long time. Outside, Mira waited beside the fire, her hands holding another meal. Tomil looked between the blinking light and the firelight. He knew a choice would come soon, but for now, he stepped outside and sat beside Mira again. The stars were coming out one by one, and their story was only beginning. Tomil sat by the fire, holding the communicator in his hand. The small screen glowed softly in the dim light. A message blinked on the screen. It was short but clear. Rescue would arrive in 3 days. He stared at the message for a long time. He had waited for this moment since the crash, but now that it was finally coming, he didn't feel happy. Something had changed. Someone had changed him. Mira sat beside him, quietly eating the meal she had made. She seemed calm, but her eyes kept looking at his hands. She saw the communicator. She understood more than he thought. Tomil placed the device down and looked at her. He wanted to tell her everything. About Earth, about his home, about how much. He had started to care for her, but he had no proper words, only his hands, his eyes, and the small signs they had created together. He touched his chest and then pointed to her. Mira's face remained still for a moment. Then she slowly nodded. She already knew. The next morning, Tomil woke early. He checked the sky. A small silver light moved across the clouds. It was a scout drone from the rescue ship. It circled the area and flew away again. The ship was nearby. They had found him. Mira arrived at her usual time, carrying a basket of food. But today, the meal was not simple. She had prepared a full spread. Roasted fruits with carved flowers on top, steamed roots arranged in spiral shapes, and flat cakes with sweet jam in the center. Each dish was carefully made and placed on large green leaves. A soft scent of herbs floated in the air. Tomil sat down and looked at the food. It was beautiful. Mira had never made such a big meal before. This was not just food. This was a message. She sat beside him and waited. He picked up a piece of the cake and tasted it. The sweetness touched his heart more than his tongue. He looked at her and smiled, but his eyes felt heavy. This was a goodbye meal. After they ate in silence, Mira opened a small pouch and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. She handed it to him with both hands. Tomil opened it carefully. Inside was a hand-carved charm made from wood. It was shaped like a tree. On one side was a small figure that looked like Mira. On the other side was a figure with a suit and helmet. Him. Tomil held it close. He felt his heart beating fast. This gift was her way of saying she would remember him. She stood up slowly and walked a few steps toward the trees. Then she turned around and looked at him with eyes that said more than words ever could. Her lips moved gently, and for the first time since they met, she spoke a word in his language. She said the word stay. It was soft and simple, but it echoed deep inside him. Tomil stood there frozen. He had wanted to hear her voice for so long, and now that he had, it broke something open inside him. He took a step forward, but she had already turned and disappeared into the forest. The next morning, the sky was louder. The rescue ship had entered the atmosphere. A voice called from the communicator asking for his location. He answered but told them to wait. He needed time. He needed to think. Tomil sat alone by the fire, staring at the wooden charm. Mira had trusted him. She had cooked for him, helped him heal, taught him her ways. He remembered the quiet evenings, the shared drawings, the clay figures, and the light in her eyes when they watched the stars. He walked into the forest, following the path she once took. He didn't know exactly where she went, but his feet moved without doubt. Deeper into the trees, the wind grew still. Birds flew overhead, but the ground stayed quiet. After a while, he reached a small clearing with smooth stones placed in a circle. It looked like a sacred place. He stepped carefully. Then he saw her. Mira stood at the far end, surrounded by figures that looked like her. They were taller, older, and dressed in fine robes. Their eyes were fixed on Tomil. Mira walked to the center and raised her hand, a sign of peace. Tomil stepped forward and did the same. The others watched him silently. Mira took out 2 items. One was the wooden charm she had given him. The other was a smooth stone with symbols carved into it. She placed both in the middle of the circle. Then she turned to her people and placed her hand over her heart. They all lowered their heads for a moment. Then one of them stepped forward and nodded at Tomil. Mira looked at him and smiled. It was a welcome. It was a choice. Tomil now stood between 2 paths. One led back to his ship, his people, his world. The other led to Mira, her world, her people, and a life unknown. He looked at her again, the girl who cooked for him every day, the girl who taught him trust without words, the girl who asked him to stay, and he knew his answer. Tomil stood quietly in the circle of smooth stones. Around him stood the elders of Mira's people. Their faces were calm but serious. They had watched him carefully since he entered the clearing. No one had spoken, yet everything felt loud in Tomil's heart. Mira stood beside him. Her eyes were calm, her hands folded together. She looked at him not with fear, but with hope. Tomil took a slow breath and nodded once. The oldest elder stepped forward. His robe was made of soft green threads, and a bright stone hung around his neck. He held up his hand and drew a circle in the air, the same way Mira had once done to show the sun. Then he pointed to Tomil's chest then to Mira's. It was a question. Tomil didn't understand every part of their ways, but he knew what was being asked. He placed his hand over his chest and then reached toward Mira. She looked at him with soft eyes and stepped forward too. Their hands touched lightly. A quiet wind passed through the trees, like the forest itself had just taken a breath. The elder nodded and stepped back. The others followed, leaving the two of them alone in the circle. Mira gently took Tomil's hand and led him away, walking. Through the quiet trees, down a narrow path, they walked in silence for a while. Then the trees opened, and before them stood a wide open field filled with tall grass and glowing flowers. In the center of the field was a smooth stone building made from light-colored rock. Vines covered the walls, and wind chimes made from bones and shells hung near the door. This was her home. Inside, the space was open and warm. There were soft seats made from cloth and straw. Tools and clay pots lined the walls. A small fire glowed in the center. Mira motioned for him to sit. She walked to the back and returned with a large, round tablet made from tree bark. It had symbols and pictures carved into it. She sat beside Tomil and began to tell her story the only way she could, through pictures and gentle signs. The story began long ago. Her people had lived on this planet for many years. They were watchers, not fighters. They loved peace, quiet, and the balance of nature. They had always known about space travelers. Many years ago, a ship from Earth had passed over their sky. Since then, her people had feared that one day humans would land and take over their world. So they decided to remain hidden. They watched quietly from a distance. They learned Earth languages by catching signals and messages through the air. But they never made contact. Not until Tomil's ship fell from the sky. Mira had been the first to find the crash. Her people had wanted to leave him alone, maybe even hide until he was gone. But Mira did not follow their order. She had seen him lying hurt, tired, and alone. She had felt something in her heart. Instead of hiding, she chose to help. She had cooked meals for him from the plants and fruits she trusted. She had stayed nearby to watch and protect him. And slowly, without speaking a single word, she had become his friend. Tomil listened carefully. He followed her fingers as they moved over each picture. Every symbol was clear, every moment full of quiet feeling. He understood now. She had taken a great risk. If her people had known in the beginning, they might have stopped her. But she had believed in something stronger than fear. She had believed in him. When the story was finished, Mira reached behind her and took out a flat piece of dark wood. She placed it in front of him. On it were two new carvings. One showed her face, the other showed his. Between them was a simple ring made of stars. Mira looked at Tomil. Her hands rested on her knees. She didn't smile or speak. She just waited. Tomil touched the wooden piece. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them and looked at her. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and took out the small charm she had made for him. He held it out and placed it beside the wood. Then he nodded Mira, finally smiled. It was not wide, not loud, but deep and real. She stood up and lit a soft flame in the center fire. From a shelf, she took two small cups and filled them with a sweet-smelling drink made from glowing fruits. She handed one to Tomil and raised hers toward him. They drank together. No loud cheers, no big ceremony, just two hearts finding peace in each other's company. That night, Tomil sat outside her home looking up at the sky. The stars were bright, and the rescue ship still circled far above. His communicator blinked again, asking for his decision. He looked at the device, then turned it off. In the quiet, Mira sat beside him. She pointed to the stars, then drew a small circle in the air again. This time, Tomil understood. She was asking about Earth, about his home, about whether he missed it, thought for a moment. Then he pointed to the forest, the fire, the charm, And finally to her, he smiled and placed his hand over his heart. This was home now. Mira leaned her head gently on his shoulder. The wind moved softly through the grass. The sky above them was endless. The world around them was full of light and life. No more fear. No more waiting. Just the quiet truth of two lives that had found each other across stars and silence. The morning sun rose slowly over the quiet forest. Tomil woke up feeling calm but thoughtful. He looked around the small stone home that Mira had shown him. It smelled like fresh earth, flowers, and warm fire. Outside, the tall trees swayed gently in the soft wind. He sat by the window, watching the sky. Far above, a small silver shape moved slowly. The rescue ship had not left yet. It waited somewhere beyond the clouds. Tomil felt a mix of feelings inside. He missed Earth and his people. He missed the sounds of the city, the bright lights, and the faces he knew. But at the same time, he felt something stronger, a quiet, peace he had never known before. Mira entered the room, carrying a basket of fresh fruits and roots. She smiled softly and set the basket down. She did not speak much, but her eyes told him everything. She was waiting. Tomil stood and walked to her. He reached out and took her hand gently. The warmth of her skin made him feel connected to this strange new world. Over the next days, Tomil spent time preparing. He fixed small parts of his ship with Mira's help. She watched with interest as he worked. Sometimes she brought food to his camp. Other times he cooked small meals inside her home, trying to learn the ways of her people. The rescue ship sent messages again, asking for his location and when he would be ready. Tomil told them he needed more time. He was not ready yet. 1. Afternoon, Mira led Tomil to a high hill that looked over the forest. The view was wide and beautiful. They could see the silver light of the ship in the distance, shining like a star. Tomil sat on a rock and pulled Mira close. He looked at the sky, then at her face. He knew a choice was waiting. He could return to Earth and his life, or stay here, with Mira and her people. Mira held his hand and pointed to the sky, then to the ground. She smiled softly. It was a simple message: Earth or here. Tomil took a deep breath. He thought of the long journey home, the cold metal halls of the rescue ship, the many faces he would meet again. Then he thought of Mira's quiet eyes, her soft hands, and the meals she cooked with care. He looked back at the hill below, where the forest stretched out like a green sea. He reached into his pocket and touched the small wooden charm she had given him. Slowly, he shook his head. No. Mira's eyes widened with surprise and joy. She squeezed his hand. Tomil smiled. He was choosing to stay. That night, the two sat by the fire in her home. They shared stories through drawings and signs. Tomil showed her pictures of Earth, the tall buildings, the oceans, the forests. Mira showed him the stars her people had named long ago. They talked without words, sharing their dreams and fears. Tomil felt a deep happiness. He had found a new home. The rescue ship sent one last message, asking if he was ready. Tomil answered, with a simple signal: no. The elders of Mira's people came to welcome him properly. They gave him a soft robe made from leaves and threads, a sign of acceptance. They smiled and nodded, showing their trust. Tomil felt pride and peace. He was no longer a stranger. He was part of this world now. Days passed. Tomil and Mira built a small garden near her home. They planted seeds and watered them together. Each new flower was a symbol of their life growing strong. Tomil still sent messages to Earth. He told them about the peaceful world he had found, about Mira's people, and the promise of friendship between two worlds. One evening, as the twin moons rose in the sky, Mira brought a small ring made from silver leaves and stars. She placed it in Tomil's hand. He looked at her, surprised. She smiled shyly and pointed to herself, then to him, then to the ring. She was asking him to marry her. Tomil felt his heart beat fast. He looked into her eyes and nodded. Together they stood under the two moons, two hearts from different worlds, joined by love, trust, and hope. Their journey had only just begun. The day was bright and clear. Tomil and Mira stood together near the edge of the forest. The soft light of the twin suns warmed their faces. Around them, friends from Mira's people gathered in a circle. The air was full of quiet joy. Tomil wore the soft robe made from leaves and threads. Mira held the small silver ring she had given him. Her eyes shone with happiness and hope. Today was the day they would promise their lives to each other. The elder who had first welcomed Tomil stepped forward. He spoke slowly and clearly, his voice gentle but strong. He told the story of two worlds meeting, of trust growing between strangers, of peace built through kindness. Tomil listened carefully. He felt the weight of the moment. This was more than a ceremony. It was a new beginning. When the elder finished, Mira took Tomil's hand. She smiled and slipped the silver ring onto his finger. Tomil returned the smile and placed a simple wooden charm around Mira's neck. It was the first gift she had given him when he arrived. Their friends and family clapped softly. The sky above seemed to shine brighter. The twin moons began to rise, casting a soft light over the land. After the ceremony, everyone gathered for a feast. Tables were filled with food made from the forest, fruits, roots, and special dishes Mira had taught Tomil to prepare. The air was filled with laughter, music, and stories shared between humans and Mira's people. Tomil felt a deep peace. He looked around and saw the joy in every face. He thought of the long journey that had brought him here. The crash, the meals, the silent visits, the growing friendship. And now this. Mira stood beside him, her hand in his. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Tomil smiled and whispered, "Thank you." She nodded and smiled back. Days passed and life grew fuller. Tomil and Mira built their home near the forest. They planted gardens and learned from each other. Tomil showed Mira how to use tools from his ship. Mira taught Tomil about the plants, animals, and stars of her world. Together, they sent messages to Earth. Tomil told his people about the peaceful planet and the kind, wise people who lived there. Earth listened and sent messages of friendship. One night, as they sat under the stars, Tomil asked Mira about her people's past. She told him stories of long ago, when her ancestors first looked up at the stars and dreamed of friends from far away. Tomil shared stories of Earth, its oceans, mountains, and cities filled with light. They dreamed of a future where their two worlds could learn from each other and live in peace. Time passed slowly but happily. Tomil and Mira's love grew stronger. They faced challenges together, storms, strange animals, and messages from far away, but they never lost trust. Their story became one told across the stars, a story of two hearts joined across worlds, a story of hope, courage, and love. One day, a small group of Earth travelers arrived on the peaceful planet. They came with open hands and kind words. Tomil and Mira welcomed them. They showed them the land, the forests, and the home they had built. Earth and Mira's people began to talk. They shared ideas and learned from each other. They promised to protect the planet and keep peace. Tomil stood beside Mira, watching the first Earth ship land. He felt proud and hopeful. The crash that had started his journey was now a new beginning for many. Under the twin moons, Tomil and Mira held hands. Their eyes shone with love and promise. They knew the future was bright. Together, they would build a world where two hearts and two skies could be one.